This might be the strangest challenge ever. Let's set the stage. I had a dream. In this dream, I picked up a book. I could only see the title, the top quarter of the book. It was a white book with red type, and the title was The Bewee's Brass Frump. I woke up the next morning and I thought about this, and it sounded like such an obscure title. I kind of laughed, and I told my girlfriend about it over breakfast, and she had absolutely no reaction because I'm always babbling pointless writer things, but she's very good at picking up and understanding when something clicks. So I said, this sounds a little bit like children's story or maybe a YA fantasy. And then she said, yes, it does. I immediately thought of an opening line, and she said, okay, I want to hear more. Based on that alone, I wrote down the title and the opening line. What I'm going to do today is sit down with nothing but a title and a vague idea and see how far it gets me in terms of turning something as obscure as the Bewee's Brass Frump into a story. Now, Stephen King says he doesn't write anything down. If it's a good idea, it'll stay with him. And not that I want to disagree with a living legend. However, in my time of working with creative teams in comics, batting around ideas, I've seen that you can actually take an idea, no matter how obscure, and turn it into something. And I got fairly good at running with obscure ideas and turning them into things. I think the problem with writers not wanting to work on ideas and not writing everything down is not everything appeals to us personally. It's not that it wouldn't be a good idea for the next person, or even a good idea for us if we developed it enough that it would catch our interest. So I'm going to spend this writing session working on that idea. I have a fresh notebook, and I know I'm going to get ideas while I'm working on it for the story that I can write down, and I'm going to try to write at least a chapter, and I'm going to work on it for like maybe 3 hours. At the end of that time, I am going to read the first page, or maybe the first 2 or 3 pages, and I'll let you guys judge whether or not this sounds like something worth pursuing. If I feel that it's something good, or if I get enough reactions that tells me they think it's a good idea, then I will file the notebook and the chapter away for a future project, because I'm right in the middle of working on another project. I don't want to stop one project to veer off into another, but at the same time, I thought it would be interesting and obscure enough to give a shot. I love interesting and obscure things when I'm writing, and I think maybe, hopefully, you guys do too. So we're gonna see where this goes and see what happens. Ready? Let's give this thing a shot. What can I say about my drafting process? I started as a pantser, but I had so many ideas I got lost on all the tangents inspired by too many possibilities. Then I became a strict planner. Planning was better. I learned a lot. After all, writing is a discipline, and planning certainly requires patience. But after I became comfortable with the process, my plans and plots became a lot looser. I came to realize I never pantsed anything that didn't require some figuring out, some planning along the way. And I never planned a story that didn't evolve and get pantsed to some degree while drafting. I now consider myself a plantser. Drafting my current series, some books are 70-30 in favor of planning. Later books have become 70-30% in favor of pantsing. As long as I know where my story is going to end up, I've gotten those tangents down to a science. I can more easily direct everything, not to veer off the path that changes the story drastically. I've come to think that many of the arguments concerning which side is better in craft, whether it be planning or pantsing, or things like does character come before plot, are not only subjective, but temporary stages of our growth process. The more you learn, the more you change. And since we can't really learn without change, my advice would be pay little attention to those arguments. Do what's best for you in your writing in the here and now. But don't be surprised when change happens. Better yet, save yourself the struggle and experiment from project to project. Exploring makes every journey more fun. I'm actually kind of excited about this so far. It's amazing sometimes when ideas just start to come out of the woodwork, but I think there's a danger in that. I've been excited about ideas before, and what I've learned is when you first start having that rush of ideas, they all seem really exciting, and that makes them seem like good ideas. You don't have enough time or distance from it to judge. I feel like I'm onto something here. I actually do, and that's kind of interesting. By the way, my tea is called Constant Comment by Bigelow. And Constant Comment sounds kind of like a writer's tea anyway, but it's a black tea and it's kind of citrusy, kind of clovey. It's become one of my favorite teas, actually. If you haven't tried it, I'd recommend it. Let's go in for round 2. Let's see if things continue to move forward. By this time, I'm getting ideas who the Biwis might be and what they look like. At this point, I'm picturing them as ancestors to rodents, but with shorter snouts and ears that are a bit cat-like. They wear clothing similar to medieval garb. They're a race that were once warriors, but have found a peace over the centuries. Their traditions upheld with honor, but only a chosen few know what those traditions really stand for. There's magic. Of course there's magic. And their kingdom is called Zen, all things subject to change, and hoping what I end up with isn't completely trope-tastic. I just had a pretty good idea for what I'm going to use for the villains in this, and I think that's good. If I have a good villain, then I know I'm going somewhere. There was a comic book writer who had a fan at one point that asked him if he could come over to his house and watch him write because he wanted to be a writer and he wanted to see his process. The writer looked at him and said, well, what you're going to see is me staring at the blank wall, writing a little bit, staring at the blank wall, writing a little bit more, and that is the process for most of us. I feel like I'm at the stage now where I'm staring a lot at the wall. I've been at this for about a little over 3 hours now. I've got to a point where some interesting things are happening, but I'm not going to be able to get back to this tonight. So I'm going to let this rest, come back to it tomorrow, and this will actually be, I guess, a 2-day challenge. I want to take it a little bit further. I'm going to finish the chapter, and then we'll see how this comes together. We'll talk to you guys tomorrow. Back for round 2 of Biwi's Brass Frump. I did read over the pages that I wrote before I started this, which I usually like to read over the last chapter. I only wrote 5 pages last night total, so I read over the first 5 pages. There's some good and bad. I mean, it's a rough draft. There's some things that need to be inserted and some words that I use more than once that I need to go back and kind of edit out so they don't sound ridiculous. And aside from that, I'm just going to pick up where I left off. My tea for the day is Wild Blueberry. It's another Bigelow tea, and I'm not getting sponsored by Bigelow, but it's good tea. Let's see where it leads us today. Beginnings are what I sweat over most, and with good reason. Criteria of what goes into those first pages can be a little intimidating. The opening line or first paragraph is to pull readers into the story, and whether you're looking to publish traditionally or self-publish, the first 3 pages are paramount to much of our success as an author. Traditional publishers and agents won't usually read more than this before accepting or rejecting a manuscript. Often they won't even read beyond page 1, and that's the harsh reality of it. This is why there's so much emphasis on putting your best writing up front. And for indie authors, you should know that years ago, publishers ran experiments in bookstores. Their findings were that people usually read the book flap, then the first 3 pages. Most people didn't go beyond page 3 before either putting the book down or taking it to the register. This is what these rules for strong beginnings are based on. There also needs to be a hook in those first 3 pages, a place where the reader's intrigue is incited. There's a lot of advice about starting the hook on page 10 or page 20, and I won't argue that an inciting incident should occur around that time, but isn't every setback for the hero, each new discovery, an inciting incident? Seeing a character in trouble, or knowing they're about to be within those first few pages, is ideal. Make sure there's an omen or some incident which draws readers in. And if you absolutely need to set up the payoff within those early pages, the plot has to be moving forward, something which disrupts the life of the hero and gets the core story moving and gets the reader's emotions moving with it. Because within that short Amazon review or the first few pages in a bookstore, the reader needs to feel invested in more than backstory or daily life details of the character. They need to smell a plot brewing. I'm going to put this on the screen as I read it. And I'm a little uncomfortable about putting myself out there because this is the first time I'm doing it on this platform. It is rough, obviously. I haven't got it all figured out yet. The plot, I think, is there. Will I continue with this afterwards and try to turn it into something? Possibly. I'll look back on it when I'm looking forward to another project, and if it stands out to me, then I'll move forward and finish it. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below, or if it just sucks. Let me know. I'm pretty secretive with my writing until it's done and in reasonably good shape. But I'm going to take a chance because there's something to learn from this.
The Bewee's Brass Frump, a deranged experiment by Robert Jones, aka your story detective.
Chapter 1. The Bewee was small, as all Bewees were, so tiny they could not be seen by the naked eyes of humans. In fact, Bewees lived between the microscopic cracks and the earth beneath man's feet, deep between the fibers of creation, nestled in a realm called Zen. Gif finished his usual breakfast, logi berries, biscuits, and a mug filled to the brim with freshly brewed swish. He liked to gather his thoughts while seated at a small wooden table next to the fire pit, which illuminated his encampment in flickering shades of orange. Of course, most of his days were spent in thought while tidying the grounds or napping inside a small shelter constructed from timber and clay. It was just large enough to fit a bed, storage for clothing and food, and of course the wooden case in which his brass frump rested while he slept. He stared at the instrument where it lay upon the table beside him, admiring the spiral of its shape as it caught light from the fire, carrying it along the outer rim of the tubing to flare from its mouthpiece. What craftsmanship, he thought. As beautiful as it is precious. And rightly so, for wielding this instrument was bestowed upon one Bewee in all of Zen, and it would be his until the day came when his breath was no longer strong enough to make it speak. Such was the honor of the Daybringer. Shifting his gaze toward the mouth of Wicket's cave, he realized his daydreaming was about to make him late. Brushing the crumbs from his whiskers in preparation, running his fingers along his brow to smooth back his fur straight to the tufts at the tips of his ears, he took up his brass frump. He luxuriated in the warmth which penetrated his palm whenever it came in contact with the instrument. The sensation traveled up his arm, penetrating into his chest and reaching into the depths of his heart, filling him with a sense of purpose. And the sense of fulfillment he achieved by blowing his frump at the mouth of the cave each morn was like nothing he ever imagined. How he loved seeing the colors, painted at first light as it filtered down from the heavens, displaying leaves of orange, purple, and blue, tickling the yellow grass as it spread across the field toward town. A Daybringer becomes one with his instrument, and the frump was one with the day, which was, after all, the bringer of life. Reaching the cave on that particular morning, he realized he left his mug of swish on the table. Laying the brass frump gently down atop a boulder in front of the cave, he ran back for his mug. 6 steps there and 6 to return. He took a mouthful, swirling the hot beverage over his tongue to fully appreciate its flavor. Gif loved his morning swish almost as much as he loved his brass frump. He turned to pick up the instrument. Time to be getting on with my morning ritual. Reaching out to the spot where he left the frump, his fingers found nothing but cold, hard stone. Where did it go? He looked on the ground near the stone. Nothing. Panic made his fur twitch. He looked on the ground in front and behind him, retracing his steps back to the table where he sat. No, this cannot be! But alas, there was no other conclusion to be had. It was gone. Gif waited, and he knew it would not be long. He heard the wheels of the carriage rattling and the footfalls of the nettlebacks. He gasped when the carriage came into view and saw it displayed a crest upon its side. He expected the royal guard, but not Queen Xanthe herself. He watched as her retinue departed the carriage first, placing a set of wooden steps beside the carriage door. As it opened, her golden fur, the gift of a true seer, made the darkness around her retreat. Her whiskers were voluptuous, seeming to defy gravity as they arced upward and outward in every direction. He tried to remember the speech he'd been practicing, but could only manage a single word. Gone. Her gaze held steady. You had better explain the details fully. Gif shifted his gaze from the boulder where he last saw his brass frump to the queen and her council of wise wees. I only sat it there for a moment to fetch my swish. There was a murmur of voices as her council exchanged glances. Your swish? Her lips caught the front of her teeth as she grimaced, giving her words a harshness the like of which Gif didn't like at all. You have placed all of Zen in jeopardy for your morning mug? You know how I need my swish, your grace. It strengthens my resolve. The queen sighed, gazing into the mouth of the cave. If something has managed to come through there and take possession of the brass frump. Again her council exchanged words, their tone becoming frantic. What could have done such a thing, your grace? One of them asked. She peered upward into the black sky. I know only one thing for certain. It would have to be a creature of greater magic than my own. I'll go, Gif said. I will search the land beyond until it is found. Into the world of humans? The frump was my responsibility. Yes, she shifted her gaze back to Gif. It was your responsibility. However, nothing has gone into the land of humans and returned. Gif's whiskers twitched. What other choice do I have, Your Grace? Your bravery does you justice. She hesitated, if only for a moment. We never told you what became of your predecessor. Before you do anything foolish, perhaps it is time you saw the evidence of his folly. My thoughts are, and we're our own worst critic, but first page, first paragraph, it sort of incites some curiosity and gets the story moving in a certain direction, but it really could do with some stronger imagery. Something in there that stands out and punctuates it better. I also don't know if the opening line is as good as it could be, because opening line, open paragraph needs to be maybe a little more exciting. I think on the overall page itself, if you look at it with the first two paragraphs combined, it sort of does that, but not as optimally as it could. The imagery of the people, it all needs research. It all needs something to punch it up a little bit. Plot-wise, is it terrible? No. Is it something that makes me feel like I should continue reading it? In terms of an experiment where writing and coming along with ideas where I had none before, it was interesting. I think this was fun overall. I would definitely recommend trying it. It's fun to try new things. If you like this video, thank you. If you're already subscribed, thank you again. If you haven't subscribed already, please consider doing so. And I will see you next time on the next episode of The Story Detective.